Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and a Patreon replay from Armorama in the good old Bismarck. Now this is pretty good matchmaking and there's no carrier for him to worry about, so he might actually be able to get reasonably close enough for some secondary action, but I'm not entirely sure what his captain setup is, so I don't know if he's specialised for secondaries in this, which if the captain rework were to appear tomorrow, as is the current set of proposed skill changes by Wargaming, secondary battleships would kind of be a thing of the past from what my understanding is, or specifically German ones anyway, because the American secondary specialist ones would still have that baked in accuracy bonus, which the German battleships do not get. So a slight collision with an ally, but yes, he is indeed trying to get a bit closer. I mean, it's not quite top tier, but there's not that many tier 9s in this, so yeah, and there's only two destroyers as well, which you can be maybe a little more confident about when you have that German Hydra, but not too confident because it's still battleship manoeuvrability after all. He is, however, taking a thorough battering right now. I mean, he's getting lots of attention being the battleship that is maybe the easiest for some of these guys to shoot, and once you've started taking some damage, you'll tend to find people will focus you more because suddenly you are the target with the lowest health, and it's kind of the natural reaction is to want to try and focus things down where you can. So this is why making use of island cover and sometimes even just holding fire so you're not spotted, so you have a chance to take a heal, is sometimes quite a useful thing to do. Or conversely, if you're in a healthier battleship and you can see someone next to you getting completely pummeled, then maybe you can try and make yourself the more attractive target, but of course that can go wrong. The exact same thing happens at North Carolina. They were just pushing forwards and taking basically all of the fire at that point, so they got hammered pretty damn quickly. Now they are down on ships. In fact, they haven't taken down any enemy ships yet, but they do have two caps with having had a third, but they are losing that D cap, and they don't have, well, I don't think either side has tremendous numbers of ships over there, but the bad news is I think that's where one of their destroyers went down, so they're now a destroyer down, which is not great in a domination game. It absolutely isn't, but at least he's managed to chunk a nice bit of damage off that rune, because, you know, top tier cruiser, and getting a citadel against it was especially nice. It wasn't devastating or anything, but that's of course a whole chunk of damage they can't really heal back. And then manages to get a citadel in Massachusetts as well, which it doesn't really want to close the distance with, especially. You can see their secondaries are actually close enough to open up on his allies that are a bit closer. I think that Prince Eugen? Not 100% certain. Anyway, rather than charge down to that whole mass of ships below the B cap, he's relocating a bit westwards, but it's continuing to not look very good. They've finally taken out one enemy ship, one of their destroyers, but they are losing more than they're taking, and they're also just slipping quite badly behind on points as a result. But at least it's even in terms of cap points. At least they have some cap points to work with. He is going to have to watch out for fire across from the D cap, though. He doesn't have priority target, so he doesn't necessarily know when he's being targeted by enemy ships until, you know, the shells are flying in his direction. But at the moment they are firing at closer targets, that Iowa, so yeah, or in fact, well, one of them just took down the Eugen, which wasn't actually that close, but I'm guessing if they were broadside, they were a tasty target for that Kansas's guns, as opposed to, you know, a bow on Iowa. So more shots out. He's, in contrast to that semi-dash towards the enemy to start with, he's now definitely more keeping his distance as the game progresses. He's keeping to the mid-ranges, and you know, he's still got a decent number of heals left. He hasn't taken any super heavy damage or anything, so in terms of being able to heal health back, he's actually in a rather good position right now, but of course that can change rather quickly. Not entirely sure what the HE was for. Maybe one of the battleships, and then chose to fire at that cruiser instead. So that was kind of a bit wasted, or it could have been changing ammo and not realising he changed ammo. That does happen sometimes. The HE on this is not exactly super amazing. I mean, there might be circumstances when we would use it against battleships, but generally with the German 15-inch guns, I don't fire a lot of high explosive. I tend to use the AP more. It's got reasonable penetration. It's not as good as the Italian AP 15-inch AP shells, but it's still pretty decent. I think the French 15-inch AP is pretty good as well. I suspect at this point this must be a deliberate choice, the fact that he's still firing. We've also got maybe a ram going on there, and yeah, there we go. The Iowa, I guess, choosing to make that trade when they were much lower health versus the rather healthy Lion. So that kind of works okay for them, for Armorama's team, but they continue to be down on points and ships. That was only the third enemy kill, and it was their top tier battleship that was sacrificed in return to do it. But at least he now does not have to worry about the Lion. I mean, if the Iowa had gone down, which might have been very well possible to the Lion's high explosive, then it would have been Armorama facing him with just a Colorado for immediate backup, so that would have been maybe not very pleasant. So there we go, and there's the secondaries opening up. So I don't think that's a full secondary spec. That was a less than the full, what is it, 11 point something kilometres you can get, but he did get the secondary kill on the Massachusetts, which is quite nice. Also on fire again, which is a bit less nice, but if you can get this Bayard, that will be one major source of fires out of the way. So obviously that's a pretty high priority right now. I mean, the rune's also, of course, a bit of a nuisance in that regard, but the rate of fire and the fire chance of the German HE shells is I mean, actually it's going to be higher than the Bayard's shells, but it's just the sheer number of shells that the Bayard can put out is you know, it's the runes don't really hold a candle in comparison. So he's down to his last heal. He can still get up to about half health right now, but that's excluding any further damage he might take, of course, and at least one of the runes is taking a keen interest. He's on fire again. He's burned an awful lot in this game. If he survives, this is going to be a fireproof for sure. But if he survives is a bit of an open question right now. They have been steadily narrowing the points gap, though. They never really did try to push up and take the A cap, which has been good for Armorama's team. Even though they had all those ships down there, they kind of gravitated more towards the middle, and of course they've taken B, and of course they now have those 3 cap circles ticking away. But it's looking a lot more even than it was. Armorama's definitely not in tip-top shape right now, though. He's burning and doesn't have a lot of hit points left. He's got 1 heal, which will take him up to like a quarter health, something like that, so he has to be rather careful. And there are multiple enemy ships left that could be rather nasty. I think principally I mean the Scharnhorst, just with the health they've got, the rate of fire, and the Massachusetts has a lot less health, but those guns are rather nastier. Now, Colorado on their team is also still very healthy though, which is good for them. I think they're going to need somebody to be able to take some hits at this point. So the Kitakaze puts Torps out on the Scharnhorst. If they can get that kill, that would be jolly useful, but they are in a position where they can get radared potentially by that Balti, and I think the Balti will be close enough. So there we go, Torp hits into the Scharnhorst. I think they are getting radared because they are now getting shot at, unless was that just them shooting and me thinking it was shells incoming. I think no, there are shells being shot at them, so I don't know if that's just somebody was trying to shoot at where they were shooting from, or if there really was radar in play, but I don't think it was radar actually. Anyway, now Armor is spotted once again. That Baltimore's certainly making a priority to try and kill him, and he actually gets the killing blow on the Scharnhorst as well, which is really very good news. Unfortunately, the Colorado just sank from Mayhan flooding, of all things. So yeah, they went from having a fair decent amount of health to none at all, and that's followed in quick succession by their Megami being sunk by torps as well. However, Armor isn't done yet. He actually then manages to kill the Baltimore for the 4th kill, and that now puts them at 4 ships versus 3, and he's got a shot at a Kraken here as well. But he's got to be jolly careful what he does next. And there we go, we actually see the Massachusetts taking a bit of a pot shot. So meanwhile, over there's the Fiji that has been hanging around that position for a while, I think. And they've actually managed to kind of screw up by revealing themselves. I mean, maybe it was a bit tempting to get armor, but the Fiji broadside was not, like, that wasn't a good position. So that is actually the Kraken right there, which is rather nice, in addition to the other things he's got at this point, because he's over 100k damage. So that just leaves the Massachusetts and 1 rune. Massachusetts has been fairly cautious in this game. Most of his team have gone to deal with them. They've also recapped C, so it's 2 versus 2, and they basically either need another cap or they need more kills in order to secure this. And there's still 5 minutes to go, but I think just the numbers advantage they have is probably going to work in their favour at this stage. However, I'm not sure Armor made the best choice to go and try and flip D. I think he might have been better off sticking with his allies at this stage, because he doesn't have any more heals, and this rune won't have to land a lot of hits to actually finish him. Now, they're both aware that they are there. I mean, maybe Armor was counting on this rune not being here and just being able to flip the cap unmolested. I'm thinking maybe the rune would go and try and join their ally, but that's not proved to be the case. And I think it's just angling for a shot here, but instead of maybe hitting reverse, just backing up out of there, he's trying for the cheeky shot, but I don't think this was a good plan. I mean, he's not going to get the cap, and all he's really doing here is putting his ship at risk, which at the moment, with the points this close, is not necessarily a good idea. They're both just hydroing each other through the island, so even if they can't directly line of sight each other, they do 100% know where they are. Well, up until the point where they both just get out of range, or at least Bismarck's radar runs out of range, but that gives the rune an opportunity to back up, take some shots, and actually the Massachusetts tries to put in some shots from the side as well, and those don't really do anything. I think it's purely the rune that gets that final bit of damage. So he does a bit of damage himself to the rune, and actually the Massachusetts has just died to the Kitakaze's torps, so they've kind of traded in terms of a battleship's worth of victory points. But still, I think fresh off this, like, it was really not looking good for them for a while, and it was starting to kind of stampede away from them, and then it's gotten to a very close end, and Armor kind of unnecessarily died, and then that surviving rune also unnecessarily died. They really did not have to do that, but the points are still so close, and now that they've got 3 cap circles, that they will probably still win this. Spoiler alert, by the way, yes, they are in fact going to win this, but the question is, are they going to actually manage somehow to get this rune down? Because both these surviving ships, the Abruzzi and the well, actually, no, the Abruzzi's got a bunch of health, but the Kitakaze is very low health, so maybe the Abruzzi could afford to open fire, but considering how it's gone, you know, it would be a bit risky. They've managed a really good comeback and then managed to make it a much narrower win, maybe, than it needs to be. And Armor did really well. He got 5 kills, nearly 150k damage, but also managed to die when he didn't have to, so he sort of contributed to how this is ended. But as it is, the Abruzzi is out spotting the rune, and that's actually giving the Kitakaze a chance to get some fire in from a different angle, and it just remains to see actually who will get the kill, because the rune wasn't particularly high health. They'd obviously used all their heals, and it was actually the Abruzzi in the end that managed to get that final blow. So that was a bit of a roller coaster, that game. I mean, it really looked like it was sliding away from them for a big part of it, and then the enemy team got overconfident and just gave away way more ships than they had to, when then Armor's own team, including Armor, then reciprocated by giving away ships they didn't have to. So yeah, that was probably a more close game than it really had to be. And let's be honest, if the enemy team hadn't kind of screwed that up, they probably could have walked away with that being a reasonably competent win, but instead it just completely flipped on them and ended up being this game instead, which admittedly was far more mayan on willen to be, to use the correct little Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference there for nobody at all, I guess, for me. Let's be honest, I only ever do these things for me. Anyway, it turned out to be a far more interesting game than it probably would have been, is what I was trying to say, before I tied myself up in verbal knots, as I like to do. So that's it for this Patreon supporter replay. If you want to find out how to support me on Patreon, there's a link to that down below, and otherwise I just hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, you can do all the usual things down underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.